Chapter 10. My biggest motivation? Just to keep challenging myself. I see life almost like one long university education that I never had. Every day I'm learning something new. By Richard Branson. Business teaches lifelong lessons. I will always be grateful to three teachers, gurus, who have been instrumental in my grooming and successful journey. The first two are, of course, my parents. Had they not inculcated a vision and moral values in me, I would not have reached where I am. The second teacher is my business, which itself came into my life, taught me the techniques with a practical experience and forced me to learn the importance of hard work, honesty, and humanity. All my teachers were kind enough to reward me generously when I fulfilled their expectations. My experience is that business teaches an entrepreneur lifelong lessons. It is a process of continuous learning. I would like to share some important lessons that I imbibed in myself by observing, listening, and following others, or even from my own experiences. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. The words al-adil in Arabic mean a good soul or a person who always thinks of the well-being of others. The story behind selecting these words as the title of our business is already narrated in one of the previous chapters. We have always cherished the sanctity of this name, and in return, it gave us the valuable trust of local customers. Once an old lady rushed to our store complaining about the herbal mixture she had purchased a day before. Her eyes looked red and swollen, and tears were flowing continuously from them. She told me that she had dissolved the mixture in water and cleansed her eyes at home, and since then she was suffering from inflammation of the eyes. She insinuated that the product might be adulterated. I was shocked to learn that she had self-administered the therapy, and that too by reading from here and there. I immediately took her to a nearby doctor. She got relief after proper medical treatment. I then explained to her that our product was not adulterated, but she herself was responsible for the wrong use of that mixture. The product was meant for oral consumption only, and she should have consulted her family physician before applying it for any other purpose or by other means. The old lady apologized. Before leaving, she exclaimed, "Son, your store's name, Al-Adil, is pertinent. God bless you." For those who wish to expand their business abroad, the first valuable tip is, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Defense is more crucial than attack. I have had a love of playing and exercising since childhood, but after reaching my 20s, I was so immersed in business that I couldn't spare time even for a regular workout. This problem was troubling me. In that era, martial arts movies had captured the minds of the younger generation. Fascinated by the kung fu displayed by heroes, I also decided to join a karate class. Due to a daily workout, I had already developed a lean and muscular body. I desired to supplement it with a self-defense technique. I soon found a gymnasium in Dubai where, apart from the regular workout, various self-defense techniques such as judo, karate, kickboxing, etc. were taught. I enthusiastically enrolled for the karate class and visited the chief instructor of the gymnasium. He casually asked my background, daily routine, and the motive behind joining the class. He then thought for a moment and advised me, "Young man, please do not mind if I suggest a different course. I think you should opt for a judo class. Judo is a self-defense technique where you need not attack the opponent with full vigor. Instead, you can overpower him with strategic maneuvers. Since you are a businessman, mastering judo will also benefit you in your profession. Remember my words, a good defense is more crucial than offense." I was surprised. Though he had no experience in business, his outlook was unmistakable. I followed his advice and learned every judo technique. I followed the same strategy in business. I never envied anyone, never got involved in competition, and never took an aggressive stand. Instead, I concentrated on keeping all the necessary permits, documents, and accounts of my business and brand up to date, thus safeguarding my castle. It helped me enormously. Once our marketing staff reported that a malicious competitor was copying our wrappers and distributing counterfeit products in the market. I pacified them and used a maneuvering strategy. We collected our proofs and legal documents first, and then only I dragged the culprit to court. As he was cornered from all sides, he began imploring to us for pardon. But the stringent law didn't spare him, and he had to pay a hefty fine besides losing his reputation forever. How true is a quote by Barry Eastler, a best-selling American novelist. He says, "The two most important things to do for self-defense are not to take a martial arts class or get a gun, but to think like the opposition and know where you're more at risk." Don't hurt others' self-esteem. Once on a holiday, one of our stores was more crowded than usual and several customers had thronged in front of the billing counter. At the end of the day, when the cashier girl was tallying the total amount against transactions, she found some money missing from the cash box. She was mystified, as no one had entered her cabin and she also had not left her place. She was a sincere, honest worker. Panic gripped her because the missing amount was not paltry but totaled approximately 100k dirham. She reported the incident to the manager, not knowing how the theft occurred, and left nervously. The next day, she came with her mother and spoke to the manager. She had remembered that a stranger had an argument with her just at the closing hour, and this had distracted her attention for some minutes. The manager did not believe her and made a serious mistake. He alleged that she herself might have stolen the money and was cooking up a story to cover the crime. The girl's mother requested him not to accuse her daughter, but he remained adamant. This infuriated the girl as it was a slap to her self-esteem. She dragged our company to court. Since I was the owner, the court summoned me. I was unaware of the incident until then. For the first time in my life, I stood before the judge. The court directed both parties to settle the matter amicably. I conducted a thorough inquiry and called all the concerned persons to verify the facts. The girl fearlessly pleaded her stand, but our HR manager did not seem firm on his allegation. He began justifying his words in context of possibility. I immediately sensed his falsity. Meanwhile, I found out that similar incidents had occurred in other parts of the city. The theft had been committed by hypnotizing the person in charge. The girl was telling the truth. I apologized to her instantly and at the same time reduced the authority of the HR manager. The girl tearfully thanked me and began gifting me a cake and a bouquet every Christmas as a token of her gratitude. We should never hurt others' sentiments and self-esteem. Dalai Lama, the great spiritual leader, says, "Our prime purpose in this life is to help others. And if you can't help them, at least don't hurt them." Ordinary people help better. When I started a company, I was required to complete some legal formalities for the registration. To my surprise, even after submitting all the documents, my registration remained pending. When I personally visited the office to inquire about the delay, I was told by the concerned officer that my file had not been cleared due to some corrections in the memorandum of partnership document. He ordered me to resubmit all the documents with a fresh application. I panicked as the reapplying process was cumbersome and time-consuming. I spent the whole day convincing the authorities that the corrections were minor and I should be given permission to change only the document having errors. But there was no ray of hope. My file was handed back to me. I sat there on a bench outside the office in utter disappointment and tension. With eyes closed, I was rubbing my forehead thinking what to do next. Suddenly, someone broke my trance by touching my shoulder. I opened my eyes and saw a peon standing in front of me. He kindly asked me what my problem was that had kept me sitting there for so long. I told him the whole story. He opened my file, glanced over the documents and understood the corrections. Then he asked me to wait for some more time. After 15 minutes, he came back and handed me my file, which was all cleared and signed by the authorities. I was speechless with surprise. When I asked him how he had managed that, his smiling reply was, "Sir, I know every person, every regulation, and also every solution in this office. Experience teaches you how to handle problems." I learned a valuable lesson from this incident. The people whom we consider ordinary usually have practical solutions for every challenge in life, and they readily share them with us when we need their help. Once I had realized this truth, I frequently began taking guidance from them. In business also, I have always discussed my problems and took advice from small and ordinary traders. I am reminded of another such incident. Once I had purchased a space in a building for our superstore. Surprisingly, other shopkeepers in the premises suddenly started behaving coldly to me. I was worried by their not-so-friendly attitude. My problem was solved by a sweeper who cleaned that building every day. He had known every shopkeeper there for a long time. With his help, I succeeded in convincing my neighbors that I was eager to become their friend rather than a competitor. I invited all of them for a meeting and luncheon and offered my help in solving the common problems faced by everyone in the building. This helped to change their envious perception to a friendly demeanor, and I was easily admitted into their group. Our friendship has lasted for more than 3 decades now. Noted American philanthropist Richard Goldman aptly says, "Ordinary people are capable of doing truly extraordinary things." Customers should get royal treatment. One early morning, I was traveling to some remote rural place from Mumbai. After a 3-hour journey, I took a break and stopped my car in a small town on the way. I decided to have my breakfast at a nearby restaurant. In those days, I was undergoing medical treatment for my severe acidity and was prescribed some medications before eating anything. As I searched for the medicines, I couldn't find them. Perhaps I had forgotten them at home. I decided to purchase the tablets and headed for a medical store. The store was open, but the owner was busy in daily prayers. There were a number of photo frames of various deities on the wall behind the cash counter, which he was adorning with garlands. He was fervently chanting hymns. As he turned to light the incense sticks, he saw me standing across the counter. Without uttering a word, he simply waved his hand asking me to wait for some time. I stood there patiently expecting him to finish his rituals and prayers. Just then, another customer rushed into the store hastily and demanded some medicines urgently. This disturbed the owner's attention. He angrily shouted at that person, "Can't you wait for a couple of minutes till I finish my prayer? Why so much hurry? People like you always accept the service providers like us to dance to your tunes. If you don't wish to wait, find another shop." The needy customer had no option but to wait. When the owner completed his worship, he turned to me first and asked my requirements. Instead of replying, I pointed towards the other man and requested the owner to serve him first. Before leaving the store, I expressed my disappointment to the owner. "Sir, I think today your worship remained incomplete. Also, God must be disappointed as you didn't recognize him." He looked at me in utter bewilderment and asked what I meant. I then explained to him, "Look, I am also a shopkeeper, but have never humiliated my customers. On one hand, we proclaim the customer to be a king, but seldom give him due respect. You have made two mistakes. First, you could have finished your worship and prayers well before the store opened. Second, you are not an ordinary shopkeeper, but a medicine supplier. You ought to serve the patients first, anticipating any kind of medical emergency. Praise can wait, but death doesn't. For anyone in business, their customer should be treated with royal treatment, and serving them should be considered as a worship." Swami Vivekananda aptly says, "If you want to find God, serve man first." Profit, the first important goal of business. I frequently give business tips to the youth in my entrepreneurship awareness lectures. In one such lecture, a person asked me to describe the formula of my successful business in a single word. I immediately answered, "Profit." As everyone was pondering over my reply, I continued, "Yes, every business must be done with the sole aim of earning profit, and that too ethically. A profitable business automatically fetches success, expansion, and prosperity. Your wealth is judged by how much profit you have in hand rather than how much your business volume is on paper." I have learned this wisdom from my Sindhi friends in Dubai. When I was a new entrant in the business, I was living in an area where most of my neighbors were Sindhi businessmen. This community is acknowledged for their industriousness and trade aspirations. They enjoy business and life equally. I found every Sindhi house in the vicinity adorned with modern amenities and posh interiors. They spend a large portion of their income generously on food, ornaments, and other luxury items. But what puzzled me was, if these traders ran their businesses with a very low profit margin, how did they maintain their comfortable lifestyle? I asked this question to many of them, but they seemed reluctant to share their trade secrets with an outsider. Finally, after a long time of trust, I was successful in getting the answer from one of them. He said, "Look, Dhananjay, it is not very difficult to understand. When business is your only source of income, you have to earn profit because your family depends on that income. We run our businesses for profit first, and luxury and charity comes afterwards. We never let go of the profit even if it is as small as 1 dirham. At the same time, we try our hardest to retain the customers by offering them products at a low profit margin. When they do come again and again, profit steadily increases. Remember, to succeed in business, never lose profit and a customer." I got the message. Later, I taught the same technique to my elder son Rishikesh. He was a student then. Some of his foreign schoolmates loved a brand of Indian cookies. Rishikesh found a business opportunity in it. He purchased a dozen packs from a shop and sold them to his friends at a greater cost than the MRP. When I learnt about this, I disapproved of it and taught him to earn steady profit ethically. I told him to approach the main distributor and buy a large quantity of packs with maximum bargain. When he did the same, I told him then to sell each pack for its printed MRP. That way, Rishikesh earned both a handsome profit and the trust of his friends. Friends, let us remember a quote by famous American automobile executive Lee Iacocca. In the end, all business operations can be reduced to 3 words: people, products, and profit. Keep ice on head and sugar on tongue. We have always followed a strict policy of purchasing and supplying only quality foodstuffs. We would purchase them from both Mumbai and Dubai. In Mumbai, the wholesale market of spices is at Masjid Bandar, and in Dubai, it is at Deira, Dubai. Whenever my father visited these markets, I would accompany him. Once, We were returning from Masjid Bandar after a purchase. It was late afternoon on a summer day. We were both hungry and decided to eat at a restaurant on the way. The lunchtime mentioned on the board outside was actually over. But luckily, we were allowed in to have lunch with the last batch of customers. By the time our lunch arrived, some restaurant staff had already begun winding up the operations. At that time, we heard a war of words from a side table. It was between a waiter and a customer. The reason behind the quarrel was, in fact, trivial. The customer had liked the crispy papad in the dish very much and had demanded some more. The waiter had refused, saying that the side items were finished and out of stock. This had enraged the customer. He was arguing and pleading that since he had paid the full price of the lunch, he was entitled to get every item mentioned in the menu. As both parties were adamant on their stance, the conflict got bitter. Surprisingly, the owner of the restaurant sided with his staff, and we feared the situation would escalate to a physical fight. Amidst this turbulence, my father silently left the restaurant and came back with a packet of papad which he had bought from a nearby grocery shop. He handed over the packet to the cook. Within 5 minutes, the scene changed and peace prevailed. The owner of the restaurant thanked my father profusely for his presence of mind. My father wisely advised him, "Sir, I am also a small businessman, but I have never allowed any quarrel in my shop. The owner should always refrain from arguing with his customers. Satisfied customers give us name, fame, and prosperity. A wise businessman always treats his customers with patience and courtesy." When we left the place, my father turned to me and said, "Dada, if you want to succeed in business, always keep ice on your head and sugar on your tongue." The grass is green on every side. Some people possess the tendency to always whine about everything. Even if they have a good life, they always compare it to everybody else. Once I had an encounter with such a person. I had to warn him to explore the happiness in his own life. When I was on a visit to my native place, I went to see my friend. He ran a small snack shop. I had to wait for some time to meet my friend because the shop was crowded with customers and he was busy serving them. Everyone was enjoying the tasty snacks, which itself was a proof of my friend's skill. But while entering the shop, I noticed a strange thing. The garbage bin was overflowing with used paper plates and wads of tissue papers. Some of the garbage was even pouring outside. I sat beside my friend and appreciated his tasty food and the customer's response to it. But it didn't please him. He had a frown on his face. He began complaining about customers, remarking that they had no discipline at all. He drew my attention to the garbage scattered everywhere and exclaimed, "Look, how my customers are turning my shop into a garbage heap. In fact, the neighboring shop is even better than ours and also has a sophisticated clientele. It is a ready-made clothes shop. When I watch customers there, they leave the premise carrying attractive parcel bags in hands and with smiling faces. Here in my shop, I get embarrassed to see only hungry and careless customers." I was quite shocked at my friend's negative viewpoint. I replied, "Dear friend, you are making a big mistake. You think the grass is greener on the other side, but I believe it is green everywhere. Don't blame your customers. Actually, you, as the owner of the shop, are at fault. If the garbage bin is overflowing quickly, it is your duty to empty it on time for serving new customers. It is not that difficult. Assign one of your employees for that work only. Keeping the shop clean is your responsibility. Please do not criticize your customers for it." When he looked unconvinced, I said, "Hey, be proud of your business. The customers in the neighboring shop visit there once in a while, but your customers come every day. It reflects that your cash flow is better than your neighbor. Success in business is synonymous to the overwhelming response of customers. Why are you spoiling your happiness comparing it to others? My friend understood his mistake and immediately ordered his employees to clean the shop thoroughly. He has a spacious shop now, which is even more crowded than before. How true a quote is by Helen Keller, an American author. Your success and happiness lies in you. Resolve to keep happy, and your joy and you shall form an invincible host against difficulties. It's a buyer's market, not sellers. When I started my career in Dubai, I was a youth of 20. The next year, when my birthday arrived, my father presented me with some dirhams as a gift and asked me to buy anything of my choice. Actually, in those days, our business was passing through a financial crisis and we had adopted a frugal lifestyle. But my father put his worries aside and celebrated my birthday with gusto. For quite some time, I had desired to buy a wristwatch. I went to a nearby store and requested the owner to show me some affordable watches. He was a kind and jovial senior man. He showed me wristwatches of various brands. I selected a cheap one which fitted my budget. While my purchase was being packed, I inquisitively asked the owner whether his store stocked expensive watches of world-famous brands. He replied affirmatively and called me to another counter. Beneath the glass, there was an eye-catching display of beautiful watches. He asked me which one I liked and I pointed at one. I hesitatingly asked the price and he replied that it was worth a few thousand dirhams. Almost like reading my thoughts, the old man stopped me and said, "Son, I know what you are thinking. Forget the price at this moment. At least try on the watch you liked most and see how it adorns your wrist." He himself placed the watch on my wrist. I felt honored and returned the watch to him. He said to me with a smile and cheerful words, "Young man, one day you will surely visit my shop again to purchase this piece." His words came true. A decade later, I visited the same store. This time, I was the managing director of my company. The owner was now in his late 70s and didn't remember me immediately. But when I introduced myself and reminded him of my precious visit, his eyes gleamed. To my surprise, the same watch was still there, which I purchased happily. Before leaving, I casually asked the owner, "Uncle, how did you predict so surely that I would visit again?" The old man smilingly replied, "Sir, I saw a dream in your eyes. I did nothing but sprinkle some hope on that seedling." I admired him for the friendly treatment he had extended to me and told him as such. He replied, "Sir, the world has changed from a seller's market to a buyer's market, and Goodwill has proved to be the best return on investment. Therefore, sellers must serve, respect, and retain their customers. Had I not treated you amiably that day, you would have simply turned to another store and I also would have lost a good customer." Michael Brenner, a famous motivational speaker, says, "If you just help your customers or help your buyers to buy and answer the questions that they have in their journey, then you can really succeed." Discard bad habits. Many years ago, I unfortunately had the habit of smoking. Actually, I was not a chain smoker, but would enjoy 5 or 6 cigarettes every day. This addiction was mainly due to the influence of movies. I was copying the style of popular celebrities. I was not aware of the health hazards caused by smoking. I kept this habit hidden from my wife. That was why, when I left my office every day, I always had a mouth freshener ready in my pocket. But as it is wisely said, the truth always comes out, sooner or later. One day I started coughing and sneezing. This illness surprisingly lasted for many days. A fortnight later, I consulted a physician. Even his treatment proved futile, so I rushed to an ENT specialist. He suspected that the ailment might be prolonged due to nose bone enlargement. He suggested a surgery for it. Since I feared the operation, I consulted a chest specialist for a second opinion. He read through my reports and asked me a single question. "Are you a smoker?" I nodded in affirmation. His crisp advice to me was, "Quit smoking today, or else be prepared to quit the world." Don't worry. Acquired habits can be easily discarded. I pondered over his words and decided to stop smoking. Miraculously, I got better within a week. Since then, I have given up smoking. I am of the opinion that habits like smoking, chewing tobacco, betel nut, or even chewing gum degrades our personality in public and at times even causes losses to our business. Once a company had invited bids from suppliers for a specific contract. Finally, they chose me and another competitor for the same and invited us for a price discussion. My competitor was very ambitious. He had already expressed his willingness to cut his rates further to get the contract. The company then asked me to reduce the prices quoted in my bid similar to my competitor, but since it was impossible, I declined the offer with an apology and returned. I gave up hopes to acquire the contract. After some time, the same company called me and awarded the contract, even sanctioning the rates in my bid. It was a surprise for me. I asked one of the committee members from that company why they changed their decision. He replied, "Mr. Datar, when we were finalizing the terms and conditions with your competitor, we observed that he was a chain smoker. He had bad breath and couldn't control his addiction even for an hour. The committee decided to believe your firm attitude rather than a person who can't control his bad habits in public. I thanked God for the opportunity and learned a valuable lesson from this incident." Friends, our personality makes a great impact in public appearance. Hence, quit the habits that are disliked by society. As it is wisely said, it is easier to quit the bad habits today than tomorrow. Every day is sunny when you have money. This is an incident which took place about 22 years ago. I was a small but established entrepreneur. Once I had planned a tour to Hong Kong, Thailand, and Indonesia for some business purposes. I was traveling on my own. I reached Hong Kong by a flight from Dubai. From there, I had to catch another flight to Thailand. On the Hong Kong airport, I stood near the conveyor belt waiting for my luggage to arrive. Tension began gripping me as I could not find my suitcase. It had not arrived by the same flight, perhaps misplaced somewhere in the transition. When I registered a complaint with the airline desk officials, they admitted that the bag had mistakenly not been loaded into the flight cargo hold. They assured me that it would arrive by another incoming flight. I was terrified as my clothes, medicines, documents, flight tickets, and even worse, my wallet was inside that bag. I had made a big mistake by putting all my money in the wallet. Thankfully, I had my passport in my pocket. There were no credit cards, ATM, or net banking in those days. The passengers had to carry either cash or traveler's checks. I was caught in a dilemma. What was I going to do without money? I was a bit relieved to know that in such cases, according to airport rules, the passenger is entitled to get some amount as temporary help. But when I received the currency, I was even more disappointed as they were not American dollars but Hong Kong dollars. The amount was only sufficient to purchase some food. I felt hungry. As the food inside the airport was costly, I came outside. The clothes I wore smelled of sweat, So I first purchased a cheap shirt and trousers from a street vendor, ate cheap street food, and returned to the airport lounge with almost nothing in my pocket. How astonishing! Destiny had compelled the managing director of a company to become a helpless and penniless man in a flash. At last, I spent the remaining amount and made an overseas call to my hosts in Thailand from the airport booth. The gentleman acted promptly and made the next part of my journey easier. Friends, remember, we must always have enough money to safeguard our dignity in times of challenges. Learning the best earning. When I started my career in Dubai, I was merely a 12th standard graduate. I had no intention of studying further as I was averse to learning. Previously in SSC exam, I had failed in mathematics 5 times, and that fear had never abated. My father didn't like my phobia and always pushed me to pursue further education. In our shop, a senior citizen named Hanumanta Anna worked as a laborer. He was from Andhra Pradesh in India. I would call him only Anna, someone as respectable as a father. He doted on me. I remember once when I had a high fever and was bedridden for a couple of days, Anna had nursed me and even provided me with a regular sponge bath. Despite being multi-talented, Anna was illiterate and couldn't even write his signature. When Anna retired from service, my father rewarded him for his honesty and hard work with a handsome fortune. Anna had always wished to spend his post-retirement life at his native place, so he left for India. After some days, he wrote to my father informing that he had built a 2-story house in his town and everything was splendid. A year later, when I went to Mumbai, I coincidentally met Anna's son. As I inquired about Anna, he disclosed dreadful news. His father had committed suicide some months ago, and the family was now living a miserable life. The reason behind it was even more shocking. Anna had rented out his newly built house, but the tenant had robbed him, taking undue advantage of Anna's illiteracy and naivety. He had made a fake sales agreement, claimed ownership, and forcibly taken possession of the house. Anna couldn't bear the shock of this betrayal and had committed suicide in desperation. Anna's family was helplessly blaming their destiny. When I heard the story, I was determined to help the family. I traveled to that town and hired a good lawyer. Finally, the tenant had to vacate the house and return it to Anna's family. Tears filled my eyes when the family members touched my feet in respect to thank me. I made them all stand in front of Anna's photo and made them pledge that in the future none of them would remain illiterate. After returning to Dubai, I also immediately rejoined college, for I had realized education is wealth. Uphold your nation's prestige. Once I was on a holiday tour of Europe. I was accompanied by my wife. We visited many countries and finally arrived in Italy. It was really a pleasure to visit the beautiful and mesmerizing tourist places in Italy. We wandered the whole day and got late returning to our hotel. Unfortunately, there was no cab in sight, so we walked. We knew that we would be very late in reaching the hotel. As we felt hungry, we decided to have some food on the way. We began searching for a good restaurant, but all the restaurants too were closed. A passerby gave us the address of a nearby restaurant which stayed open till late. By the time we reached the restaurant, we saw its shutter down. We became really worried, as it was our last hope to get some food. We stood there for some time thinking about the next step. Just then we saw an old couple coming in our direction. They stopped near us and the man asked us, "You look worried. Are you lost? May we help you in any way? I told him our story and asked his guidance to find any other street food joint. The couple looked at each other. The old man smiled and exclaimed, "What a coincidence! We are the owners of this restaurant. We were returning home as usual, but midway I remembered that I forgot my wallet in the drawer. So we came back to collect it. Don't worry, I will reopen the shutter for some time. But I can only give you some instant food. Please don't mind." We nodded in affirmation and entered the restaurant. The old lady liked my wife's attire, especially her sari and bangles, and asked if we were Indian. She was even more pleased when my wife helped her in preparing the dishes. When we were full, the couple carefully closed the shutter again and began to leave. I thanked them from the bottom of my heart, to which the old man replied, "No need to say thanks. You are visitors, and we treat you as the guests of our country. You came here for a trip covering a distance of thousands of kilometers. It is our duty to offer you the most gracious hospitality. If our guests remain hungry even once, we consider it a national insult." The couple refused to take any money from us, but instead requested, "When you return to your country, do tell your people to visit Italy and experience our hospitality." I learned a lot from this incident. The Italian couple had upheld their nation's pride and prestige high. I desire that everyone of any nationality, whether at home or abroad, should always represent their nation and maintain its dignity. I have also observed that those who criticize their motherland are not respected in foreign countries. Mahatma Gandhi aptly said, "A nation's culture resides in the hearts and souls of its people." Time. The true tutor. 3 decades ago, I was a small shopkeeper. Business provided me the opportunity to establish many acquaintances in Dubai's wholesale market. Barring a few exceptions, most of the traders were helpful and cordial. But one of them was egoistic, arrogant, and selfish. He would boast of his wealth and always speak to others in a commanding tone. Actually, everyone disliked him. But because of his rich status, no one wasted time showering their resentment. Let us address him as Mr. H for haughty. One day, Mr. H came to my shop early in the morning and asked to keep a bunch of some documents with me. He ordered me, "Keep these documents with you safely. My servant will collect this bunch in the afternoon." I reluctantly nodded and kept the bunch in the drawer. I waited for the person Mr. H had mentioned, but he didn't show his face that day or the next day also. On the third day, I had to go to the government office to complete some formalities. Unfortunately, in my absence, Mr. H's servant came and inquired about his master's documents. My employees apologized for not knowing where I had kept the documents and expressed their inability to hand over the same. The man left my shop and told his master that Datar was not returning the documents. This infuriated Mr. H, and the next day he came to my shop shouting loudly. I made every effort to clear his misunderstanding, but he did not want to listen to anything and calm down. He began threatening me. "You don't know who I am and how far my reach is. Mind well, you are a small fish. I can ruin you and crush you any time at my will." I apologized to him again and again with folded hands. My employees were so angry with his attitude that they began asking me why I tolerated him. I convinced them, "Look, we are here to do business and not make enemies. Besides, what he said was true. A small fish should not mess with a shark." Soon I forgot the incidents. After some years, I got the opportunity to expand my business and our small shop transformed into a chain of superstores. One day I went to meet a businessman. After the meeting was over, he insisted that I accompany him for lunch on. His driver politely opened the door of the car. Surprisingly, when I thanked him, he avoided my sight. Suddenly, I remembered him and stared, bewildered. He was none other than Mr. H. Later, I came to know that he had suffered a huge loss in business and no one had stood beside him to help him. He had been left with no option but to work as a driver, hiding his identity. I felt sympathy for him. Friends, let us not take time for granted. All days are not equal. Time is almighty and the truest tutor. It is better to remain humble